Aloha. Aloha. Again. And happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Are you enjoying this amazing White House forum? What a way to celebrate, it's only day 3 of Heritage Month, and wasn't the poetry, the voice and the heart and the art of Rupi moving? I'd like to give her a round of applause. She moves me every single time I read her work. If I hear her and her voice and her heart and her voice and the way it resonates with us, I'm not going to state the obvious. She's a hard act to follow, but we're going to do our best because I've got an esteemed panel here. I'm honored to welcome you to the Agency Leadership Panel, Advancing Equity for AA and NHPI Communities Across Government. Once again, I'm Erica Mortsugu, Deputy Assistant to the President and the AA and NHPI Senior Liaison to the White House, and I'm going to be your moderator today. This year's theme, Visible Together, amplifies who we are as a powerful coalition, committing to empower each other. And it's not just the interracial and interreligious and intersectional coalition that I've talked about. It's also within the AA and NHPI collective to name and honor our differences and then also come back together because we are powerful together. We're also visible together because of our allies, because with our allies, with each other at the White House, throughout the administration, throughout the country, and with you, being visible together is in the DNA of our country. We're all stronger together because we find ways to support and uplift each other. So on this panel, we're going to discuss what the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to further uplift the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community is. So I'm joined by leaders of agencies, starting to my left, Rohit Chopra, Director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. In addition to the director position, Director Chopra, the Honorable, is also a member of the Board of Directors of the FDIC and the Financial Stability Oversight Council. In 2018, Director Chopra was unanimously confirmed by the U.S. Senate as a commissioner on the Federal Trade Commission, where he served until being confirmed to serve as the CFP director. We also have to his left, Shelley Lowe, the chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Chair Lowe is a citizen of the Navajo Nation and grew up on the Navajo Reservation in Ganado, Arizona. She served as a member of the National Council of Humanities, which is an appointment that she received at the nomination of President Obama from 2015 to 2022, and was the executive director of the Harvard University Native American Program, assistant dean of the Yale College Dean's Office, and director of the Native American Cultural Center at Yale University. And obviously, not least, Kiran Ahuja, the director of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. Director Ahuja is the first South Asian American, the first Asian American to lead OPM. She was an attorney at the Department of Justice, President Obama's executive director of the esteemed White House Initiative on AA and NHPIs, founding executive director of the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, and most recently, before her confirmation and her return to government, the CEO of Philanthropy Northwest. So if you wouldn't mind joining me in a round of applause for our leaders. All right, so let's get to the interesting part so you don't have to listen to me talk some more. Mahalo nui for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. We're looking forward to learning from your experiences and how your respective agencies are uplifting the AA and NHPI communities. So I'd like to start with general questions and a short self-introduction and go into specific questions from there. So, starting with Director Ahuja, and then Chair Lowe, and then Director Chopra, would you please start off with a brief self-introduction and share with us an overview of what your agency does? Director Ahuja, thank you.
Sure, thank you. It's great to be here. You know, we have the lights on us, so I wish I could see a lot of the audience. So I'm seeing some of the faces, but it's really great to see what looks like a really, really full audience. And it's great to be back because when I ran the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, thank you. Yay, okay, can we keep those on? It's nice to see faces, don't you think? It's great to be back in this auditorium where we held the first summit and to see all these incredible faces, beautiful faces and people. I run the Office of Personnel Management, and the way we like to think about the Office of Personnel Management is really the HR wing of the federal government. And we manage the policy, the technical assistance, major operations all across the federal government that support federal employees. We are the largest employer in the country. And just to give you a sense of the scale of that, 2.2 million employees as a part of the federal government. We manage the largest employer-sponsored health benefits program at $60 billion, more than 8 million people that we support with health benefits. We administer a retirement program, $88 billion to almost 3 million annuitants and their families. And we have the largest workplace giving program. Just last year, we raised more than $70 million across the federal government to support all kinds of organizations and charities. And so a part of being the largest employer, of being really the HR component, but so much more, is ensuring that we are a model employer so that we can draw from the diversity of this country to really benefit the work within the federal government, but frankly to benefit the American people, as well as thinking about all the various progressive policies that we think are important for workers. I will say even one thing that we manage at OPM is a lot of the worker organizing and empowerment efforts that have been a part of this administration. And just in the past year, we increased the number of union members in the federal government by 80,000. So there's a lot of really great work that's happening. We're glad to be a part of it. And that's just like the primer on OPM.
Thank you, Director Ahuja. Chair Lowe?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for making sure I have a paycheck.
Yes, call me if you don't. No, don't call me.
We all
Yes.
thank you for all your work. Good afternoon. Yat Shelley Lowe Yanashia, Belagana Neshle, Anastasia Tachini, Bashachi, Belagana Dashache, do Traba, Dashanale, Lo Kantia, Danasha, do Washington, Dishigan. My name is Shelley Lowe. I am Navajo. I'm originally from Ganado, Arizona. I am chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and I live and work here in Washington, D.C. So welcome to everyone who has traveled from far away. We are so delighted to see you here, and special thanks to George Washington University for hosting us today. This has been a wonderful open conversation day with lots of topics that I will take back and think about. We are the National Endowment for the Humanities. We were established in 1965 through federal legislation. Many of you have probably heard of National Endowment for the Arts. Most people know about National Endowment for the Arts. We are the sister agency, National Endowment for Humanities. And we serve the American public by supporting advanced research, lifelong learning, the preservation of cultural collections and cultural heritage across the United States. We are the only federal agency dedicated to funding the humanities and excellence in the humanities. And I often ask people, think to yourself, what is humanities? How do you define that? And to many of us in the work that we do, humanities is the building blocks that build our society. It's the way that we learn how to be individuals. It's the way that we learn how to have relationships with one another, how we learn how to have relationships with the world around us. And it's in the simplest forms, I like to say, it's our unique cultural creation stories. We all have different creation stories about how we came to be the people that we are in the places where our families and our cultures come from. And that's what humanities is. It's those stories, and as we pull them together into one, it's the story of our country, of our nation here in the United States. And that is the work that we fund through grants, but also through funding of 56 state and jurisdictional humanities councils, all of which I encourage you to try to connect with and reach out to. But we're here to advance humanities, to tell stories, and to help you tell stories, your important stories.
Thank you, Chair Lowe. Director Chopra.
Well, thank you, Erica, and thanks to all of you for being here. I think we're all grateful for everyone who's really come to Washington to want to make sure that our government is reflecting all of us and not just some of us. One of the things the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, came about was because government failed. In 2008, the financial crisis, we saw a massive predatory mortgage crisis that infected almost every state in the nation, and the results were catastrophic and wiped out wealth for people across the country. The CFPB was established to really police banks and other financial companies to make sure that that never happens again. And you know, over the last 7 weeks, I think Americans are starting to see why we need some meaningful accountability for the financial industry. We saw 3 massive banks fail: Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and just recently First Republic. And people want to make sure that they have peace of mind, that their deposits are safe, and that the flow of lending will continue fairly. So we need to always think about, how do we make sure that the financial system is not just serving a handful of people who already have resources, but serving people with ideas to start a business, for families who want to buy a home, and for really our entire country to make sure we can live up to the prosperity and dreams that we have. So there's so much we're doing, Erica, to fulfill that concept of serving everybody, especially issues that I know many in this room care about.
Wise words, my friends. And I think, let me pull a thread there. When you say that we want to be a government, we want to be leaders for all of us, not just some of it, I think that that's been really embodied by this introductory round that we just had, where the representation that you see of these leaders of agencies on the stage isn't just because we are committed to diversity. We're committed to diversity. Why? Because their lived experience has the canvas and the landscape that really animates, I think, and embodies the values by which we execute on a government for all of us, each of us, not just some of us, in our own ways. And so teeing off of that, I wanted to segue to a question for the panel about an experience that you've had that shaped how you've worked with communities, you know, again, in that frame of how we're doing government maybe a little bit differently than it has been traditionally, particularly when you are thinking about and engaging with communities that have been historically or traditionally overlooked or underrepresented. And I'd like to start with Chair Lowe, if that's okay.
Sure, I will be happy to start. Well, I grew up on the Navajo Reservation, a very rural community in northeast Arizona. And I didn't have a lot of exposure to other tribal communities in the United States until I went to college. In college, I had worked with a faculty mentor, an advisor, and she was on a lot of national councils and went to a lot of conferences and meetings. And I had the opportunity to shadow her and travel with her and visit new tribal communities and other reservations. And it was the first time in my life I realized, wow, there are lots of tribal people across the United States. I had not been taught that. I had not known that all of these tribes were around. I had also not known the beauty of their cultures and how different they were from Navajo culture. I was very used to Navajo culture and a little bit about Pueblo and Hopi cultures, but I didn't know anything about the tribes of the Northwest. I knew only what I saw on TV about the tribes of the plains, right, the teepees, and I didn't know really about their teachings and their understandings. And as I got to understand that they had such beautiful and long-lasting cultures that they were teaching, I got to see how there were many ways that we shared values and we shared teachings, but there were so many ways where we had different values and different teachings. And what I came away understanding was that that was okay, that they were going to do something differently than I was taught or as Navajos were taught, and it was okay, right? They didn't have to do it the way that we had to do it, and I don't have to do it the way that they have to do it. And it was my first kind of realization that it's okay and it's wonderful to learn new cultures and learn about their ways of life, but we don't have to adopt those ways as our own. We can keep our own beliefs and values and cultural systems, and we can be in the same place at the same time, moving towards the same goal, even with those differences. And that has helped me to really make sure that I know how to be in communities, listen to their unique needs, listen to their unique points of views, but still come together and try to move forward to the same goal.
Thank you, Chair Lowe. Director Chopra.
Well, we've only been not so long where we can gather again in auditoriums like this, and I will just rewind a few years ago in the spring of 2020. Obviously, that was where shutdowns and the economy was in a total dislocation. And one of the things we saw was so many family and immigrant-owned businesses going bust. And many of them were franchise-owned businesses unable to navigate the system to get Paycheck Protection Program loans or to work with the big franchisor to keep their businesses afloat. When you look at the data, many of those businesses are owned by people who immigrated to this country. And it has been a major vehicle for creating wealth, for creating jobs, and so much more. But often, they were not heard in the discussions in Washington about how to make sure that people could save their business, that people could actually have a fighting chance to keep doing their work. So we really embarked on a much more concerted effort to listen, not just to the Washington lobbyists, but really, for example, the Asian American hotel owners, so many other groups who had really unique issues and unique views, but affected millions of people, workers, consumers, and others. And I really think a big part of what government has to do is make sure that the system is fair for those who work hard. And I really want to make sure that people who start businesses are not being discriminated against and really can save their own business and community without getting tossed aside. And when you say, Erica, it's more than representation, it's about living those ideals. And I think we have a set of agencies that is just deeply committed to that.
I agree. Thank you. Director Ohuja.
Yeah, thanks so much. I was reflecting on it's a great question, by the way, and I think for myself, how I think about this is, I've spent a bit of my time in and outside of government, and the part that I spent outside of government was doing a lot of advocacy work for the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And when I came in at the beginning of the Obama administration to lead this White House initiative, at the time called the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, there was a big conversation, and has been for some time, right? How do we bring together the AA and the PI, or the AA and NHPI, and really it is a political construct, right, that was created in a way for us and to really see the growth and fruition of our community and how that has morphed and changed and how we are recognizing the incredible diversity within that group. But a part of that experience was having very specific conversations with the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community and the importance of their participation and representation in this, big A, little p kind of thing that has been an ongoing conversation. And I'll tell you, that's been one of the most meaningful community engagement experiences that I have had, is spending time and learning about Native Hawaiian culture, experiences, the issues, and making sure that they were being highlighted in a way that was important for the federal government. Another piece of this that I think is important for all of you, as you have taken the opportunity in your time, a full day, to come here and engage with us, is that about really engaging with public policy officials, whether on the legislative side or on the executive side. And I will say the real benefit of having you all as leaders and having you engaged is when we are able to pull you in to have very strategic meetings with leaders in agencies and also in the White House. It moves things forward. And that's what we did, and I know Erica and others, where we set up a meeting, a very important meeting with President Obama at the time, that moved a number of initiatives just because we had the right people in the room who made the case and made one statement that the president said, we need to look into that. And that was the case for Native Hawaiians on a number of issues, but in particular on the Hawaiian homelands. and some of the efforts that they wanted to push forward related to that issue. So to me, that was such an amazing experience, both in a very intellectual way, but frankly in a very spiritual way of my, getting to know a community that was outside of my own experience, but still very much a part of this broader construct of AA and NHPI that we're trying to create as a political body and power, and to forge those connections that I think are so important among each other, but then how do we leverage that for real power?
As we would say in Hawaii, that's your kuleana, and that's actually
Yes.
also the mana'o that you share with us. And I should have mentioned, I kind of short-shrifted this in the beginning, but one of the reasons why we're here is because of the model that Kieran had, Director Ahuja had exemplified in 2015. And so that's an example where we want to double down on the things that work, learn the lessons from it, the centering of the communities that you mean to impact by asking them. The fact that the four of us, the three of them, know when the right people are not in the room and to force a pause is, again, another example of a great thing that we should continue. But we're also innovating too and learning some lessons, maybe a little bit the hard way, which is why, innovatively, amazingly, and if you've read the President's proclamation announcing Heritage Month, you would have seen it, and I commend it. It's beautifully written. He mentions that in January, for the first time ever, the Biden-Harris administration released a national strategy to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for the Asian American, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. And it includes several dozen individual agency plans. I've been in government for a long time. I've never seen anything like this, laying out both accomplishments but also goals. Halfway through our first term, we're asking you to hold us accountable. That's innovative. It's a little risky. We're going to see how that works out. But I want to toss back to the panel, because each of you participated in this, to preview something in the works from your agencies that will impact the Asian American, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities in unique ways. And I'm going to start with you.
Well, there's a lot I can talk about, but one of the things that relates to what I just referred to earlier about small business. For the first time, data is often everything in terms of driving decision-making.
Can I interrupt you just for a moment?
Yeah.
Nani Coloretti, the Deputy Director of OMB, is behind. She is an OG from the CFPB. She'll be very proud of the two of us that we talked about data. All right, continue.
So we have put forth a rule that is going to be the first real small business census in America. And it's not just going to put people in big boxes and categories. We're going to actually see disaggregated data that reflect the richness and diversity of people who come to our country and start businesses. We're going to use that not only to make sure that certain groups are not being discriminated against, but also as a data set to really help minority entrepreneurs and others obtain investment, obtain the ability to launch their business in very, very new and innovative ways. We are doing so much on the mortgage front to help everybody avoid foreclosure. That includes the CFPB putting out work in so many different languages that it's not just going to be those who use English as their native language. So I think we think of this work, Erica, as embodied through everything we do. But after the pandemic and the disappearance of so many businesses, especially minority-owned businesses across America, we feel so much urgency on that front.
You're here. Thank you. Chair Lowe.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think one of the things that it's important to note is NEH had the opportunity to fund $135 million in American Rescue Plan funds. And these funds were distributed in ways that were a little bit different than we normally do our national applications and our program funds. For example, we gave $1 million to the Association for Asian Studies, and this funding was underwriting fellowships for Asian studies professionals who could conduct research, do teaching and multimedia projects, but with a particular focus on opportunities for career development for junior faculty, junior scholars, adjunct faculty, contingent faculty, first-generation scholars, You know, those individuals that often aren't in a position to be applying to any age because they aren't at the senior level or they haven't reached a level where the work that they are doing is leading to a major book publication. And we looked at how these fellowships worked. We looked at the need that communities were coming forward with. We could not fund all of the need that was out there, but we realized there were avenues to create opportunities for these individuals to start receiving and opening up funding to them in ways that we hadn't done before. So we've been working very strategically to think about how we do our funding, how we do applications for our funding, what the size of our funding and our grants look like to make sure that we are reaching those communities that we haven't been able to reach. You know, I came into this position after serving 6 years on the council, and I asked constantly about populations we weren't funding. Why aren't we funding more community colleges? Why don't we have more Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander applications? Why aren't we funding more Asian American projects? Right? Why aren't we funding small organizations and rural organizations? And this has been a real focus of the staff as we've moved forward. I also want to say that we're being very thoughtful about how we support telling histories that we have had a hard time telling. So we just announced a partnership with the Department of the Interior to support the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative. And our funding will help digitize federal records, those that are held within the federal archives pertaining to these schools. And many Native Hawaiian students attended federal Indian boarding schools. Many Native Hawaiian students were subject to language loss, cultural loss. So in addition to funding and partnering with the Department of the Interior, we're trying to figure out in our own funding, how do we open up opportunities for Indigenous, Native Hawaiian, even Pacific Islander communities to bring cultural and language revitalization back. Really focusing that effort so that we can, one, address our history, tell our history, have that history available for people to learn about, but then address the consequences of that history at the same time.
Chair Lowe, that's amazing. Thank you. I mean, I think you can tell from the richness and the different points of view. I mean, it's almost like a diversity of point of view that knits all of us together, that embodies the whole of government approach that the president has asked us to be executing and building out on. I have so many more questions, but I just hope that you get the resonance of what it is that we braid together, you know, as a team. As my old boss, Senator Urquhart, would say, we're pedaling in the same direction to get to where we go. But I'm going to pause on those questions because I wanted to let this play out because it was just so rich and beautiful to have your sharing and learnings. I had questions for, you know, Director Chopra on language access and preservation, and Chair Lowe to recap for us the storytelling and narrative change panel that you were on earlier this morning, in case any of our audience had to miss it or wanted to have like the reaffirmation of that. And Director Ahuja, retention, recruitment, training of our workforce. I do have a friend and a colleague in the audience, the first ever White House Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility, Michael Leach, and I know that he was looking forward to that. But instead, I'm going to do a lightning round just so we can close out with any last message you might like to leave our audience here, the folks who are joining us live stream or who might be checking it out later this afternoon, tomorrow, or in 60 years. So last thoughts, Director Ahuja.
I think I'd say, well, first a question, because I know we've been talking about these 32 plans, right? Like, who's read them? All right, so afterwards, you know, what I've heard from in just the quality of these plans, really amazing work that's happening in the agencies, really incredible work that we've heard from our colleagues, and I, just being a little biased here of, like my time in the initiative, a lot of work goes into it. So many folks across the federal government who are really committed to this issue in the network. So commending all the work, Erica, to you and Crystal and others for that tremendous job. And I think for us here at OPM, what I want to leave is that, you know, there's an incredible commitment by this administration around equity issues, our commitment to the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. And I would say for OPM, a lot of the work that we're doing around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, for us, it's like people are our greatest assets. We want to have all of you those who want to serve and be a part of public service. I'll just be like really kind of unabashed and be like, as the chief recruiter of the federal government, that we want to entice you to come in and have the experience of being in public service. Those who are advocating for their community are really some of the best public servants. So both in what you see the work that we're doing as a part of this initiative, you yourself could also be doing some of that work inside the federal government. But more than anything, there's so many great opportunities, and I know we're always looking for talented folks. I can say that on behalf of my colleagues and the ones who aren't here as well, and just really appreciate the time. And thank you so much for coming out.
For sure. Thank you, Director Alita, and I'll just... I'm a fan of the federal government as an employer. I'm addicted. I've obviously been a repeat customer. Chair Lowe, any last words of wisdom
Yes,
and hope?
last words of wisdom. Please get involved with NEH. There's a number of ways you can do that. Please look up your state jurisdictional humanities council. We even have councils in Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa, Hawaii, and to our partners there, Talofa, Aloha, Hafade. Please serve on a panel. You can go on our website, search panel reviewer, sign up, read the applications that come in. You are the experts in your area. We need to hear from you, and we need you looking at the applications that come forward. Then look at our opportunities and please apply to something, either directly through NEH or through your state or jurisdictional humanities council.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Lowe. Director Chopra, I would like you to be uncharacteristically optimistic about a call to action or any last words of wisdom.
Well, I just think it comes down to this, is that I don't think any of you should wait for action. We need you to advocate, to participate, and to push. And I think you need to not just expect or hope, but in some ways demand that we are accountable to you and really what we talked about before, every single person that our government serves. And that goes to all of you in this room.
Thank you. You never disappoint.
And I will just add that I think on behalf of all of us and many in this room, just want to give a huge debt of gratitude to Erica Moritsugu for really her extraordinary work in stewarding, I think, something that has been very groundbreaking and terrific.
I don't do it alone. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, my friends. Thank you again for your leadership in honoring us with sharing this space, and thank you. Thank you for being here for us. Mahalo.